The sharp clatter of suitcase wheels on the marble floor jolted me out of my stupor. I quickly bowed my head even lower, scrubbing vigorously at the gleaming floor with a rag, trying to wipe away the last dull spot. "Anastasia, what are you dawdling about? Like a sleepy fly?" Evelyn Albright's shrill voice, my mother-in-law's, echoed from the living room. I didn't dare lift my head, only mumbling something in response. My back under the cheap blouse was soaked with sweat, mixing with the acrid smell of the cleaning solution she deliberately bought just for me. This entire opulent mansion in an elite Greenwich, Connecticut, gated community reeked of expensive designer perfume, and only where I was did the stifling scent of household chemicals linger. "Hurry up. Did you iron my and Brandon's clothes and load the suitcases into the trunk?" "Yes, I ironed everything. The suitcases are already by the porch too," I replied, my voice trembling. I wasn't trembling from fear, but from exhaustion. I hadn't slept for 2 nights, preparing everything for my husband's family's 3-week European trip. I, Anastasia Miller, a Yale economics graduate with honors, was now indistinguishable from a free maid in a house where I rightfully should have been the mistress. 3 years ago, I was the pride of all our relatives in Ohio, clutching my coveted diploma from a prestigious university. 3 years ago, I met Brandon, the only son of the chairman of the board of Titan Industries. He was handsome, elegant, and courted me, showering me with imported roses and arranging romantic dinners at rooftop restaurants on New York City skyscrapers. I, a simple girl from the Midwest, was blinded by this glitter and promises of a fairy tale love. The day I walked into this house as a daughter-in-law, I thought I had become Cinderella. But I quickly realized that when the clock struck midnight, I didn't turn back into Cinderella, but into a servant. Evelyn Albright, my mother-in-law, hated me from the first sight. She would never accept a daughter-in-law outside her circle, without family or lineage. To relatives, she'd spread rumors that I had bewitched her son with some backwoods charm. And Brandon, the husband I once loved, turned out to be a spineless mama's boy. Choosing between his mother and his wife, he always chose his mother. His promises to protect and love me evaporated like soap bubbles right after our honeymoon. "When you're done with the floors, squeeze me a glass of orange juice, but no sugar, and make sure the oranges are Sicilian, not some Turkish variety. Turkish ones make my throat scratchy." Evelyn Albright cast a razor-sharp glance at me and turned away. The train of her silk designer dress swept across the floor, as if mocking the faded gray apron I wore. She had bestowed this apron upon me on the very first day after the wedding, so I wouldn't soil my clothes in the kitchen. And for 3 years, I had barely taken it off. I trudged to the kitchen, feeling my wrist ache. Last night, I had ironed 5 suitcases full of designer clothes for Evelyn and Brandon. My hands, whose fingers once danced across piano keys, were now coarse from washing, cooking, and constant contact with chemicals. I looked at the expensive juicer. My mother-in-law only drank freshly squeezed juice, but demanded I use this machine because she found my dirty hands repulsive. I took oranges from the refrigerator, carefully peeled them, and sliced them. Suddenly, tears streamed from my eyes. I couldn't hold them back. I remembered my parents in Ohio. They still thought I was living a fairy tale. Every time I called them, I struggled to suppress my sobs and lied that I was very happy, that my in-laws adored me. I dared not tell the truth. I was ashamed. An honors graduate who couldn't manage her own small family. An honors graduate who allowed her dignity to be trampled. "Hey, Scarecrow, did you drop dead in there?" Evelyn Albright shrieked again. I hastily wiped away my tears and brought out the glass of juice. Brandon sat on the sofa, engrossed in his phone. Seeing me, he didn't even lift his head. From head to toe, he was clad in designer clothes, ready for his business-class flight. I placed the glass on the table, intentionally making a slight clink. "Brandon, are you and your mother ready?" He grunted something in response, not taking his eyes off the screen. "You can talk to your husband later," Evelyn interrupted. "Now listen to me. While we're away for 3 weeks, you will take proper care of your father-in-law." She mentioned my father-in-law, Richard Albright. My heart sank. Richard Albright, the chairman of the board of Titan Industries, once a powerful man who dealt in billions on the market, had been confined to bed for 10 years. A terrible car accident had robbed him of his ability to move and speak. They said he was in a vegetative state, completely dependent on outside help. Your husband's father has been quite unwell lately, Evelyn Albright continued in a benefactor's tone. I've hired a visiting nurse, but you are still the daughter-in-law, the primary caregiver. You will feed him his oatmeal, change his diapers, give him massages. If anything at all happens to him. She poked my forehead with her finger. Don't expect a peaceful life in this house. I lowered my head. Yes, I understand. Of course, I understand. For the past 3 years, this had been my main job. I was used to the smell of medicine, used to cleaning up messes, used to talking alone to a man who never answered. Sometimes I felt sorry for him, but most of the time, I felt sorry for myself. My life was tied to a paralyzed man in a house where I was an outsider. That's good, Evelyn Albright sneered, and turned to her son. Her voice immediately became cloyingly sweet. My beloved son, the trip should be fun. If you like a bag or a watch, just tell Mommy. Mommy will buy everything. I know, Mom. Brandon smiled, finally looking up from his phone. You're the best. They hugged tightly. I stood nearby, like a shadow, like an unwanted object. Brandon cast a fleeting, expressionless glance at me. Anastasia, hang in there, he said, a perfunctory remark. I'll bring you a gift when I get back. I smiled bitterly to myself. The best gift he could give me would be freedom. Outside the gates, a car horn blared. Their Rolls-Royce was already waiting. The staff brought out the luggage. Let's go, son. Evelyn Albright took Brandon's arm. They walked out the door, never once looking back. The heavy oak door of the mansion slammed shut. The sound of the engine faded in the distance. In the enormous mansion, only I remained, in my gray apron, and the man considered a vegetable on the second floor. I stood motionless in the middle of the luxurious, cold living room. I took a deep breath. 3 weeks. I had at least 3 weeks not to hear nagging, not to see Evelyn Albright's arrogant face. I ripped off my apron and threw it into a corner. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like I could breathe. I went up to the second floor, entered the largest bedroom. The bedroom that should have belonged to Brandon and me. I collapsed onto the king-size bed, which I had never once been allowed to sleep in. I told myself I would rest a little, just a tiny bit, and then I would go do my job, washing, changing my father-in-law's diaper, and feeding him. The silence in the mansion was unnerving. It wasn't peace, but a ringing emptiness. The ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the living room became unusually loud, as if it were counting down the time of my life. I fell asleep. The exhaustion from several sleepless nights finally overwhelmed me. When I woke up, dusk was already gathering outside the window. I jumped up, my heart pounding wildly. Damn! I missed my father-in-law's dinner time. I ran to the kitchen in a panic. The oatmeal, cooked in an herbal broth, was already prepared. The visiting nurse had made it earlier in the day. It just needed to be reheated. I bustled about, my hands and feet trembling. What if Evelyn called via video to check? She had installed cameras throughout the house, except for Richard Albright's room, due to medical privacy, and the bathrooms. She wasn't here herself, but her control hadn't vanished. I poured the oatmeal into a bowl, carefully placed it on a tray, along with a glass of warm water and medications. I carried the tray upstairs to the room at the end of the corridor. This was Richard Albright's room. It always had a faint smell of herbs, and that specific stale odor characteristic of a bedridden patient's room. I pushed the door open. Only a nightlight was on, bathing everything in yellow-orange light. This dim illumination was enough to make out my father-in-law's emaciated body, lying motionless on the expensive medical bed. Hello, Richard. I'm sorry, I'm a little late with dinner today. Evelyn and Brandon have left. I always talk to him. Doctors said that even in a vegetative state, hearing might be preserved, and talking to the patient could be beneficial. But for 3 years, the only answer had been silence. I placed the tray on the bedside table, and with a practiced movement, I lifted his head, propping a pillow higher. Richard Albright was thin, his cheeks sunken, skin taut over bones, his eyes tightly closed. I scooped a spoonful of oatmeal, blew on it to cool it, and carefully brought it to his mouth. The oatmeal dribbled from the corners of his lips. I patiently wiped it with a napkin and offered the next spoon. Half an hour passed like this, the bowl 2/3 empty. I gave him his medicine and lowered the pillow again. The next step was changing his diaper and performing hygiene procedures. I did everything like an automaton. My feelings had dulled. I no longer felt shame or revulsion. I only felt an endless bitterness for my fate. I, Anastasia, a Yale graduate who once presented reports before hundreds of students, now bent double, cleaning up after my father-in-law. While I was changing the sheet, I suddenly noticed his wrist move. I froze, rubbing my eyes. It must have been my imagination, because of the dim light, because of the fatigue. I continued my work, but then I saw it again, very clearly. Richard Albright's fingers clenched into a fist, then unclenched, very weakly, but it was definitely a movement. My heart pounded like crazy. "Richard?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Do you hear me? Did you move your hand?" Nothing. He lay there, eyes still closed, breathing steadily. I froze for a few seconds. Maybe he was recovering. A glimmer of hope flickered within me. If he woke up, he was the chairman of the board. He would see how his daughter-in-law was treated. He would protect me. Evelyn Albright would no longer dare to humiliate me. But hope extinguished as quickly as it had flared. 10 years. The best doctors from across the U.S. and abroad had thrown up their hands. They said his brain was too severely damaged, no chance of recovery. That movement was most likely just an unconscious muscle spasm. I sighed, adjusting the blanket on him. "Good night. I'll go." I removed the tray, took the dishes to the kitchen. After washing everything, I returned to my small maid's quarters by the stairs. I was dead tired, wanting only to collapse onto the bed, but as soon as my head touched the pillow, the phone rang. Evelyn Albright. I jumped up and hastily answered. "Hello, Mom. What are you doing? Why did you take so long to pick up?" She hissed from the other end of the line, though she was already at the Paris airport. "Did you feed your father?" "Yes, I just fed him. I was about to go to sleep." "About to go to sleep?" she growled. "It's 10 p.m., and you're already sleeping. Did you think I left and you could relax? Go to the living room, turn on the camera, I'll check." I gritted my teeth. Yes. I trudged to the living room, turned on the bright light, and stood before the camera installed in the corner near the ceiling. "Okay, I see you. And remember, I'll call and check 5 times a day, at any time. If you relax, when I return to the States, you'll regret it." "Yes, Mom. Have a good vacation." She hung up. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the camera's red light. I felt like an animal in a cage. I returned to my room. I knew I wouldn't sleep tonight. Physical exhaustion gave way to moral depletion. I sat, hugging my knees, and looked out the window. There were no stars in the night sky over New York, just a gray haze, just like my life. I don't know how long I sat there until I heard a sound. A faint click, not like the wind, but like a door opening. I held my breath. The mansion had excellent soundproofing, but at midnight even the slightest rustle became distinct. The click seemed to come from the second floor. My heart tightened. In the entire mansion, besides me, there was only my father-in-law. The visiting nurse had left at 5 p.m., and the gardener lived in a small house by the gates. A burglar. I clamped my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. The mansion was in an elite gated community with serious security, traditionally, but nothing is absolute. Burglars must have been watching, and knew the whole family was away. Only I was left alone. I trembled like an aspen leaf. What to do? Call the police? My phone was on the nightstand. If I called, would the burglars hear? I tiptoed off the bed, trying not to make a sound. The floor was icy. I went to the door, and then another sound. This time, footsteps, very light, but they were footsteps. I fell into a real panic. My father-in-law was paralyzed. Who, then, was walking on the second floor? No, it couldn't be. I must have imagined it from overwork. Maybe it was noise from the street, or the house settling. I tried to calm myself, but cold sweat still trickled down my back. I pressed my ear to the door, holding my breath. Silence. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Nothing. I exhaled with relief. "Anastasia," You'll scare yourself to death, I reproached myself. It's all your imagination. I returned to the bed, intending to lock the door and try to sleep. But as soon as I turned my back, I heard the sound of water. The sound of water from the shower, from the bathroom on the second floor. This time, there was no mistaking it. The sound of running water was very distinct. And on the second floor, there were only 3 rooms. Ours with Brandon, Evelyn Albright's room, and Richard Albright's room. Our rooms and my mother-in-law's room had been locked before they left. Only. It couldn't be. A crazy but terrifying thought pierced my brain. I jumped up. Fear gave way to an irresistible curiosity. I ran out of the room and rushed up the stairs. I didn't even turn on the light in the hallway. I just ran in the dark. I stopped at the door to Richard Albright's room. The door was ajar. Steam wafted from inside, smelling of herbal soap. Richard Albright had used this expensive soap before the accident, the very same one Evelyn Albright had put away because a vegetable doesn't care what you wash him with. I froze in place. The sound of water in the bathroom stopped. Then I heard a human sound. A sigh. A deep, satisfied sigh of a man who had just taken a shower. Oh my God. I recoiled, nearly falling. The bathroom door opened. A tall male silhouette emerged. A towel was wrapped around his hips. Another lay on his shoulders. He was drying his hair. The dim moonlight from the window fell on his face. The eyes I had seen tightly closed were now wide open and staring sharply right at me. The body, once emaciated to the bone, now, though still thin, looked strong and held itself upright. It was Richard Albright, my father-in-law, the man who had been considered a vegetable for 10 years. I opened my mouth but couldn't utter a sound. I wanted to scream, to run away, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. Richard Albright seemed surprised to see me too, but only for a second. Surprise quickly gave way to a cold, assessing gaze. He brought his index finger to his lips, urging silence. Shh. Then he unhurriedly walked to the closet, took out a silk robe, and put it on. He moved like a perfectly healthy man. Moreover, he moved with a dignity, with an aura of authority, that I had never seen in anyone, not even Brandon or Evelyn Albright. I still stood in the doorway, rooted to the spot. I stammered. Richard Albright turned to me. His gaze was no longer the blank stare of a patient. It was the gaze of a tiger. Close the door, Anastasia. His voice was hoarse, but full of authority. It was the voice of a man accustomed to giving orders. Like a robot, I obeyed his command with a trembling hand. I reached out and closed the door. The dry click of the lock cut off all my escape routes. That night, my entire world turned upside down. I stood rooted to the spot. My knees trembled so much I thought I would collapse. My mind was completely blank. Was this a dream, or was I so overtired that I was hallucinating? The man in a vegetative state, whose diapers I had changed for 3 years, and whom I had spoon-fed, whose body was skin and bones, now stood before me at his full height, in a silk robe, exuding authority. You, Dad, I stammered, unable to form a complete sentence. My throat was dry. Richard Albright looked at me. His gaze lacked the emptiness I usually saw. It was sharp as a knife, cold as ice, but somewhere deep within lurked an indescribable weariness and pain. You're very scared, aren't you? He said. His voice was hoarse, like someone who had been silent for a long time, but still authoritative. I'm sorry I frightened you. You weren't supposed to see this. I took a step back, still clutching the doorknob, ready to flee at any moment. Where are you going to run? He asked, as if reading my thoughts. Downstairs, to scream to the world that I'm alive? Or call that shrew Evelyn, to tell her that her victim didn't die after 10 years? No, I wouldn't. I hastily waved my hands. My voice broke with fear. Richard Albright frowned, the way powerful people frown. Then what were you doing here? I heard a noise. Yes. I nodded frantically. Tears streamed from my eyes. I heard the sound of water. I thought it was burglars. Burglars. He smiled bitterly. In this house, the most terrifying burglars are its owners. He walked to a velvet armchair in the corner of the room, The same armchair Evelyn Albright had left there so that, as she told the public, she could sometimes sit and watch her husband, so as not to get too bored. He sank into it languidly. "Sit down, Anastasia." He pointed to the small chair I usually sat on when feeding him. I dared not disobey. Trembling, I perched on the edge, clasping my hands. I dared not look him in the eyes. "How long have you been in this house?" he suddenly asked. "What?" 3 years and 17 days, I answered instinctively. I had counted every day spent in that hell. 3 years and 17 days, he murmured. "I've been watching you long enough." I jerked my head up, stunned. "Watching? So. You were conscious all this time?" "I never lost consciousness," Richard Albright said, enunciating each word. "From the very day Evelyn and her damned brother staged that accident to kill me, I was conscious. Conscious to hear her tell the doctor, 'Why save him? Let him die.' Conscious to hear her instruct everyone to say I had brain damage and was now a vegetable." I gasped in horror. A feeling like a hammer blow struck my chest. I was conscious to pretend to be a corpse. His voice was full of hatred. If I had shown any signs of recovery then, I would have immediately died from some sudden complication. The only way to survive was to die the way she wanted me to. "Oh my God," I groaned. This truth was more terrifying than any movie I had seen. "I wasn't going to reveal myself to you," he continued. "But today, I heard. Heard? I heard your conversation with Evelyn. I heard her humiliating you, forcing you to stand before the camera like an animal. I heard you, after hanging up, run to your room and cry." I was stunned. "Foolish girl," he sighed. "You weren't crying from fear. You were crying from humiliation. From helpless rage. You, a Yale graduate with honors, forced to live in this house worse than a dog." Tears streamed down my cheeks again. He was right. He had struck my most vulnerable spot. "I heard you cry all these 3 years. I heard her yelling at you. I heard that spineless Brandon never once dared to stand up for his wife." He tightly gripped the armrests of the chair. "I waited 10 years. I thought I'd have to wait longer. But your appearance, and your patience forced me to change my plan." He stood up and walked to the opposite wall. There stood a massive, ceiling-high mahogany bookcase. What are you going to do?" I asked anxiously. He didn't answer. He tapped the spine of an old book titled The History of Commerce. A dry click sounded, and an entire section of the bookcase slowly slid aside, revealing a thick steel door. Richard Albright placed his finger on a small fingerprint scanner hidden on the side. The door beeped and opened. Beyond it was pitch black. "Come with me," he turned to me. "I'll show you the truth about this house." I swallowed. I knew that once I crossed that threshold, my life would never be the same. Trembling, I followed my father-in-law. The heavy steel door clanged shut behind me, making me flinch. Inside, it wasn't as dark as I thought. Soft light from built-in LED lamps illuminated a completely different space. On the largest wall hung a row of monitors, about 20 of them, displaying footage from every corner of the mansion: the living room, kitchen, hallways, garden. Even our bedroom with Brandon, and Evelyn Albright's room. Only his own bedroom was missing. A shiver ran down my spine. You installed cameras." "Evelyn installed them," he interrupted. "She installed them to monitor the staff, to monitor you. She didn't know that with her own hands, she gave me eyes to monitor her." I looked around. The room was small but had everything necessary. A neatly made single bed in the corner, a desk with a modern computer, a small refrigerator, and a separate bathroom. There was even a treadmill and some simple exercise equipment. "You lived here for 10 years?" I couldn't believe my eyes. "Yes." Richard Albright sat in the desk chair. "During the day, I was the vegetable on the medical bed, lying there, enduring Evelyn's disdain, Brandon's indifference, and your care." He looked at me. "Every move you made, every word you spoke to me, I heard everything, knew everything, but I had to pretend. I took medication to induce muscle atrophy. I learned to control my breathing, my heartbeat, to deceive all the doctors. The medication? I have my own people. David, my former assistant, the only one I trust." He arranges everything. The food you fed me, I mostly spat out when you left. The medicine Evelyn gave me, I discarded. I have a special tube leading outside to dispose of everything. She thought she had imprisoned me, but in reality, she trapped herself in my snare. I listened, holding my breath. What a terrifying plan. What inhuman patience. Richard Albright turned to the computer. Come here. I meekly approached. He pressed a few keys. A video appeared on the screen. It was the conference room of Titan Industries. I saw Evelyn Albright and a plump, middle-aged man with a cunning, unpleasant face. That's Arthur, her brother, Richard Albright pointed out, the executive vice president. In the video, Arthur said, "Proceed according to plan. We inflate the cost of this shipment threefold. Transfer the difference to an offshore shell company in Singapore." Evelyn said, "The old man is already obsolete. The company will be ours sooner or later." A cold shiver ran down my spine. 10 years ago, Richard Albright's voice was hoarse with suppressed rage. I discovered they were siphoning money from the company. I was too trusting of my wife. I told her I would send both of them to prison. She fell to her knees, weeping, begging for forgiveness, and I, like an idiot, softened. He slammed his fist on the table, making me jump. She asked me for one chance, and that chance was a truck with failed brakes that crashed into my car on a winding mountain road. My driver died instantly. I, fortunately, was thrown from the car, but I was completely broken. When I woke up in the hospital, she and Arthur were discussing how to ensure I wouldn't recover, and then I decided I had to become paralyzed to survive. He exhaled heavily, trying to suppress the anger that had accumulated for 10 years. 10 years I lay there, gathering evidence. Every contract, every email, every conversation. She and this Arthur stole billions of dollars from Titan Industries. They thought I was a corpse, so they let their guard down. He turned to me. His eyes burned with fire. But to overthrow them, I needed a person. A person on the outside. A person Evelyn would never suspect. A person I could absolutely trust. I froze. You're talking about me? Yes, he nodded. When Brandon wanted to marry you, I was secretly against it. I thought you were like all the others, a gold digger for our family's money. Evelyn thought so too. She agreed to your marriage to have someone to torment, a toy to prove to everyone what a noble son she had, and that his wife was just dirt under her fingernails. I lowered my head. Every word was like a knife to my heart. But I was wrong, and she was wrong too. Richard Albright opened a desk drawer and pulled out a folder. For 3 years, I observed you, and Evelyn also tested you. He pulled out a photograph, a printout from a surveillance camera. In it, I stood in his bathroom, holding a diamond ring. Remember this? She deliberately lost it, and then watched from outside via her phone. She waited for you to hide it. A ring worth $100,000. I heard you talking to your mother that day. She needed eye surgery. Yes, I nodded, trembling. I remembered that despair. I held that ring and cried. But what did you do? He asked. I returned it to her. Exactly, you returned it. And she even yelled at you for being clumsy, saying you couldn't even hold a ring. And you didn't say a word in return. He pulled out another sheet. The second time, she deliberately left her wallet in the living room. It contained $5,000 in cash. She was watching you. You didn't even open it. You immediately took it to her room. And the third time, he looked at me with unconcealed respect. She mistakenly transferred $20,000 to your account. Said it was a New Year's bonus. What did you do? I transferred it back, I whispered, and said I didn't need the money. I only needed respect. Exactly. He slammed his palm on the table. You're a Yale economics graduate. You're smart. You know the value of money. You were treated like a servant. Your dignity trampled. But you kept your core. You're not greedy. You're patient, but not humiliated. He looked at me intently. In this house, everyone plays a role. Evelyn plays the virtuous mistress. Brandon plays the respectful son. But only you and I know their true faces. You have everything I need. You're smart enough to understand my plan. You're patient enough to continue playing this role. And most importantly, You're not greedy. You're pure enough for me to entrust my life to you." I was still in shock from what I heard. "But, Richard, I'm so scared. How can we stand against them? They have both money and power." "We will get everything back," he cut in. "But do you know the real reason Evelyn hates you so much?" I looked at him in confusion. "Isn't it because I'm from a modest family? That's only part of the truth." He smirked coldly. "She hates you because she's afraid. Afraid that you'll bear a grandchild, my legitimate grandchild. But Brandon is your son, a grandchild." "Brandon," he interrupted me and dropped the last, most terrifying bomb. The truth that made me reel. "He's not my biological son." I staggered. The secret room spun before my eyes. I had to grab the edge of the table to keep from falling. "What? What did you say?" I stammered. My ears rang. "Brandon isn't your son then? Whose is he?" "He's Evelyn's son from her former lover," Richard Albright said, his voice thick with hatred. "A gigolo who abandoned her as soon as he found out she was pregnant. She came to me already carrying his child." He closed his eyes, as if reliving that fateful day. I was just over 30 then. My career was soaring. My father insisted I get married, settle down. I was absorbed in work and waved my hand, agreeing to meet the girl my family had arranged. It was Evelyn. Young, beautiful. She seemed so modest and virtuous. She lied to me about everything. Lied that her family was forcing her to marry, that she was very unhappy. She cried, and I melted. I married her. Immediately after the wedding, she announced she was pregnant. I was happy like a fool. I believed it was my child, that it was double happiness. He smiled a bitter, heartbreaking smile. I named him Brandon, hoping he would become a winner and inherit the family business. I loved him. I was proud of him, but I didn't understand why. The older he got, the less he resembled me. Not outwardly, but in character. He was weak-willed, soft, and completely under his mother's thumb. "Evelyn protected him, wouldn't let me raise him," she would say. "He's still small, don't be so strict." Everything came out. He gritted his teeth when Brandon was 15. He and I had a terrible fight because he botched a charitable company project. Evelyn defended him and, in a fit of anger, screamed, "Don't you dare teach my son. He's not your son." I held my breath. That same day, I secretly had a DNA test done, and the truth was like a knife to the heart. Brandon, the son I had loved for 15 years, shared not a drop of my blood. "Oh my God," was all I could utter. And then I understood everything. I understood why Evelyn Albright hated me so much. She was afraid of me, afraid that I would bear a child, a true grandchild of Richard Albright. If that child came into the world, Brandon's position would be shaken. The mother and son's plan to seize the inheritance would be threatened with collapse. I understood why she constantly humiliated me, tormented me, treated me as a servant. She wanted me to leave on my own, or at least ensure that Brandon and I had no children. I understood why Brandon was so spineless. He wasn't just spoiled, he was a pawn in Evelyn's hands. He knew the truth, or at least vaguely suspected it. He knew he had no legal right to the inheritance, so he clung to his mother like a leech. They deceived you for so many years," I whispered. "Not only deceived," he growled. When I learned the truth, I was going to throw them both out, but she fell to her knees again, begged, said that for the honor of the family, for my career, I had to let her stay. She promised she would never claim anything. And, just like the second time, when I caught her stealing, I softened again. He slammed his fist on the table. "It was the greatest mistake of my life. I forgave my enemies, and they stabbed me in the back. They didn't just want money. They wanted my life. They wanted the entire Titan Industries Corporation." He turned to me. There was no more hatred in his eyes, only cold determination. "Now you know everything, Anastasia." I stood silently in the secret room, trying to process all these horrifying facts. My marriage, 3 years of humiliation. All of it was just part of a long-running drama, full of lies, intrigues, and attempted murder. "I still don't understand," I whispered. "If they already controlled the company, why? Why didn't they get rid of you? Why did they need to keep you? Because of the 51%, Richard Albright cut in. I am the founder of Titan Industries. From the very beginning, I retained the controlling interest, 51% of the shares. Evelyn and Arthur, no matter how much they stole, could only manipulate the remaining 49%, which belonged to minor shareholders. They couldn't kill me, he explained, because, according to the bylaws I drew up, in the event of my sudden death without a legally certified will, my 51% of shares would automatically be frozen and transferred to a charitable foundation I designated. They would get nothing. The only way was to keep me here, in a vegetative state. I became their hostage. They needed me alive as a front. All their decisions were made in my name. The chairman is undergoing treatment. They used Evelyn's guardianship to manage everything. And they waited until they bought enough of those 49% shares, and waited for the right moment to force me to sign a deed of gift. I flinched. Force you to sign? But They have their methods. They could have had me declared legally incompetent through the courts and forced you, as the daughter-in-law and direct caregiver, to sign the documents as a secondary guardian. Evelyn was preparing for this. That's another reason why she kept you here. It turned out I wasn't just a maid. I was a backup plan in her scheme. Richard Albright walked to a small safe hidden in the corner. He opened it and took out 2 items. The first was a small black metallic USB drive. The second was an old-fashioned bank key. Such keys are used for safe deposit boxes in Swiss banks. He placed both items on the table in front of me. Here, he pointed to the USB drive, are my 10 years. 10 years I lay in bed, gathering evidence. All audio recordings of their secret meetings, all spreadsheets of fund movements, all fictitious contracts, all their offshore accounts. This is enough to ensure they both, and all their relatives, rot in prison. I looked at the tiny USB drive and felt its immense weight. And this, he pointed to the key, is the 51% of Titan Industries shares. The originals, with my signature, are kept in a bank in Zurich, something Evelyn will never get her hands on. This is the real power. He took a deep breath and looked me directly in the eyes. Anastasia, I've shown you everything. I've staked my life on you. Now I'm making you an offer. I held my breath. Help me. Help me get Titan Industries back. Help make these creatures pay for everything. In return, he said, enunciating each word, I will give you 20% of my fortune, an amount that will last you a lifetime. And more importantly, I will give you freedom. I will help you divorce Brandon, throw him out of your life. You will be free and able to live with your head held high. His eyes glowed. You have 3 weeks until they return. Do you dare? Silence hung in the room. I could only hear my heart pounding wildly. 20% of his fortune. Freedom. It was something I hadn't even dared to dream of. But it wasn't that which made me decide. Richard Albright's gaze convinced me. The gaze of a wounded tiger, confined to a cage for 10 years, finally seeing a chance to pounce on its prey. And I remembered. I remembered the 3 years and 17 days I had lived here. I remembered Evelyn's slap when I accidentally broke a cup. I remembered Brandon's contemptuous gaze when I asked him for a little money for my mother's operation. I remembered the nights I knelt and scrubbed floors, silently weeping. I remembered the gray apron that had become my second skin. I had endured enough. I had been humiliated enough. The fear in me slowly faded, giving way to something cold, hard, growing inside. It was hatred. I don't need 20%, I said. My own voice sounded firm. It no longer trembled. There was no weakness in it. Richard Albright frowned in surprise. I will help you, I continued. I don't need money. I only need one thing. What do you want? I looked him directly in the eyes. I want to make them pay with my own hands. I want them to experience what you and I have experienced. Humiliation, powerlessness. I want justice. A rare smile touched Richard Albright's lips, a smile of satisfaction. Good. Very good, he nodded. I wasn't wrong about you. You have my character. He pushed the USB drive and the key towards me. Take them. My life and your future are in them. I tightly gripped them in my palm. The USB drive was cold, but inside me, everything burned. "What's the plan, Richard?" I asked, in a completely calm voice. "First," he said, "you must transform. You can no longer be the meek girl, Anastasia. You must become Anastasia, the businesswoman capable of managing a corporation. But you're a Yale economics graduate with honors. Don't tell me you've forgotten everything," he interrupted. "Starting tomorrow, I will teach you everything about Titan Industries, its projects, its shareholders. You will study here, in this room, but outside, you must remain the same pathetic, submissive Anastasia." Second, he handed me a small satellite phone. "This is a secure phone. It's only for communicating with one person, David, my assistant. He's outside, waiting for my orders. He will prepare everything you need, new clothes, attorneys. He'll contact our old, trusted shareholders." I nodded, taking the phone. "And third," he said, "this is the most important thing. We must perform. We must stage a perfect play. You will take even more meticulous care of me than before, and I will be an even more pathetic paralytic than before. We must deceive Evelyn so that she suspects nothing until the very last second." I took a deep breath. Fear disappeared. Only the thrill of a soldier before battle remained. "I understand everything," I said firmly. "I won't let you down." "Good," he nodded. "Now return to your room. Tomorrow morning, precisely at 5 a.m., when you bring breakfast, our war will begin." I bowed to him and left the secret room. The steel door closed behind me. I stood in the dark hallway. I was no longer the Anastasia I had been 10 minutes ago. The frightened lamb had died. Now, a wolfess, having tasted blood, stood here. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in my cramped maid's quarters, but my brain was working at full capacity. I was no longer yesterday's Anastasia. Fear had given way to a cold, frightening calm. I had a goal. I had a weapon. And I had an ally who was more terrifying than any enemy. Exactly at 5 a.m., I got up, cooked the oatmeal, and prepared everything as usual. I put on my old gray clothes, carelessly tied my hair in a bun, looked in the mirror, and ordered myself, "You are still the same pathetic, submissive maid, Anastasia." I carried the tray of oatmeal to Richard Albright's room. Out of habit, I knocked, though I knew there would be no answer. I entered. He lay there, eyes closed, breathing weakly, exactly as he had for the past 10 years. If I hadn't seen everything with my own eyes last night, I would never have believed this man was acting, changing his diaper, wiping him down. I did everything even more meticulously than usual. As I wiped his hand, his fingers subtly moved, tapping my palm 3 times. It was a signal. I understood. I turned on the water in the bathroom to create noise and leaned close to his ear. "Listen to me," he whispered so softly that only I could hear. "Today, Evelyn will call at 10 a.m. New York time. She'll be boasting. Don't do anything. Be submissive, as always." "Yes," I whispered back. "Your task," he continued, "is to contact David. His number is in the phone. The password is my accident date, October 6th. Tell him to activate Operation Thunderstorm. Phase 1. Just say that. He'll understand." "Okay." After that, go to the secret room. All documents regarding Evelyn's bank accounts are on the table. You have 3 hours to study them. Remember, you're a Yale graduate. Don't disappoint me." I nodded. I finished feeding him, cleaned everything up. As soon as the door closed behind me, I immediately went to my room and locked myself in. I took out the satellite phone he had given me, an old, simple device. I turned it on, dialed David's number. My heart beat faster. This was the first step. The phone rang only once. A man's voice, calm but wary, answered immediately. "Hello? Hello," I said, trying to speak evenly. "I'm from the family." A few seconds of silence on the other end. Password. October 6th. Chairman. David's voice changed immediately. There was excitement in it. "Is the chairman okay?" he ordered. I took a breath. "To activate Operation Thunderstorm. Phase 1. "Understood," David replied succinctly. "Anastasia, right? I've been waiting for this order from you and the chairman for 3 years. From this moment, I'm at your disposal. Anything else? Not yet, I said. I need to study the documents. I'll contact you later. Understood. I'm initiating the freeze of all credit cards belonging to Evelyn Albright and Brandon Albright. By my calculations, all cards will be blocked across Europe within 30 minutes. Excellent, I said and hung up. I didn't waste a second. I slipped into Richard Albright's room. He lay like a statue. I went straight to the bookcase, opened the secret door. Inside, Richard Albright was already at the computer. He nodded to me. Sit down. Here. He pushed a thick folder towards me. These are all their black, platinum, unlimited credit cards. All are registered to the company as representative expenses. I instructed David to create a backdoor in the linked bank system. He can block them at any moment. I sat down and immersed myself in reading. Figures danced before my eyes, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, just for shopping and entertainment. My blood boiled. This was money earned by the sweat and blood of thousands of workers. My father-in-law's money. Exactly at 10 a.m., the landline phone in the secret room, connected to the house's main line, I took a deep breath and pressed the answer button. Hello, I said in a weak, frightened voice, as always. It's you. Evelyn's voice boomed from the other end. What are you doing? Did you feed your father? Yes, I just fed him. I'm doing laundry now. Clean my and Brandon's clothes thoroughly, she commanded. I'm calling to brag, actually. I'm in Paris. The city of lights. Such beauty. I just bought a crocodile leather Hermes bag for almost $250,000. A gorgeous thing. Something you won't even hold in your hands your entire life. Understand? She cackled. I had heard that laugh for 3 years. I gritted my teeth, but my voice still trembled. Yes, very beautiful. Happy shopping, Mom. Of course, happy shopping. All right, I'm going back to the stores. You watch after your father there. That's all. Disconnecting. She hung up. Richard Albright looked at me and smirked. Count. 10, 9. We watched the computer screen together, where David was tracking Evelyn's accounts in real time. 3, 2, 1. Start. At that very second, a message came from David. Blocked. Richard Albright laughed coldly. Now enjoy, daughter-in-law. Enjoy her first shock. We didn't have to wait long. 15 minutes later, the landline phone rang again. This time it was Brandon. I picked up. Anastasia. What's wrong with Mom? Brandon's voice was panicked. All her cards are blocked. Not one is going through. Did you do anything at home? I didn't do anything. I pretended to be scared. I've been home all the time. Maybe a glitch at the bank? What glitch? All of them are blocked. My cards too, Brandon shouted. Mom has the entire Hermes boutique in an uproar here. What a disgrace. I don't know. Damn it, Brandon swore. The bank must be at fault. I'll call Arthur. Let him sort it out. You watch after your father there. He hung up. I looked at Richard Albright. For the first time in 10 years, I saw him laugh genuinely, wholeheartedly. Excellent, daughter-in-law, he said. First strike is perfect. She'll think it's a system error, or that Arthur did something and his accounts were seized. She won't suspect us yet. What next, Richard? I asked. My heart fluttered with the first victory. Next, he said, we prepare for the big show. She'll definitely call via video, and we must give her a masterpiece performance. The panic of the mother and son turned out to be even stronger than I had anticipated. To suddenly find themselves without money in the middle of a shopping paradise was worse than torture for them. They called Arthur incessantly. Through the camera and listening system Richard Albright had installed, we heard everything. Arthur, what the hell are you doing? Evelyn shrieked into the phone. Why are all the company accounts frozen? Did you steal too much and get caught? I don't know, sis. Arthur in New York was also in a panic. I'm checking. The banks say it's an order from the head office in Zurich. I can't do anything. What does Zurich have to do with this? Evelyn screamed. Fix this problem. Brandon and I are stuck in Paris without a dime. Do you want us to beg? After spending a whole day in futile attempts to resolve anything, Evelyn began to suspect something. Like a poisonous snake, she started to doubt everything, and she called me via video. It was 8 p.m. I had just finished cleaning the living room. I deliberately left my face smudged, all sweaty. The gray apron was on me. The phone rang. Seeing mom video on the screen, my heart skipped a beat. Although I had prepared, I was still nervous. I looked at the surveillance camera in the corner, signaling. In the secret room, Richard Albright nodded. Act. I took a deep breath and pressed the answer button. Evelyn's aged, angry face appeared on the screen, against the backdrop of a luxurious 5-star hotel lobby. You, she snarled immediately. What are you doing? Yes, hello, Mom. I trembled, lowering my head, as befitting a pathetic Anastasia. I'm washing the floors. Show me everything around. I traced the living room with the phone, my hand trembling. Yes, I've cleaned everything. Maybe something happened at home. Evelyn narrowed her eyes. Is your father all right? There it was. She was starting to suspect. Yes, he's fine, as usual. I just fed him his oatmeal. I don't believe you, she interrupted. Go to his room immediately. Turn on the camera. Yes. I pretended to be very frightened and flustered. I grabbed the phone and ran upstairs. I'm coming. I pushed open the door to Richard Albright's room. The room was dark. Only the yellow nightlight was on. He lay motionless. Turn on the light, she commanded. I switched on the main light with a trembling hand. Bright white light hit the medical bed, and I almost screamed. Richard Albright. The current Richard Albright was even more of a vegetable than usual. He had prepared. He wasn't just lying motionless, he was lying in a strange, contorted pose. Saliva drooled from the corner of his mouth. I even smelled urine. He had deliberately wet his diaper. His eyes were wide open, but stared at the ceiling with a lifeless, empty gaze. He looked like a corpse just taken from the morgue. Oh my God, I cried out, partly acting, partly from genuine shock. What is it? Evelyn also flinched. What's wrong with him? I don't know, Mom, Dad. I brought the camera closer. Richard, what's wrong? I shook him and sobbed. Stop! Don't shake him! Evelyn shrieked. She seemed frightened. It's just spasms. Vegetables get those. But the saliva. Mom, I'm scared. I burst into tears. He's not dead, is he? What are you afraid of? She snapped. Wipe him. Change his diaper. Quickly, it's disgusting to look at. Yes. I hastily put the phone on the table, aiming the camera at the bed, and ran for a towel and diaper. Evelyn watched me through the camera. I did everything, trembling and sniffing. I deliberately knocked over the basin of water, creating a complete mess. I played the role of a foolish, clumsy, and terrified daughter-in-law. What an imbecile, Evelyn swore. One job, caring for a sick person, and you can't even do that. Wipe off that drool. How disgusting. Richard Albright showed no reaction during all this time. Even when I roughly wiped his face with the towel, he remained lifeless. I mentally applauded him. The chairman of the board, who could act like that, he made a huge sacrifice. After almost 15 minutes of scolding and orders, I finally finished cleaning up. All right, that's enough. Evelyn seemed tired and convinced. He's still the same useless corpse. So, it really was Arthur who messed things up, she muttered. You watch after him there. If anything happens to him before I get back, I'll kill you. She hung up. I froze for a few seconds. Then I hastily turned off the light and closed the door. I burst into the secret room. Richard Albright was already there, calmly drinking tea. He wiped away the saliva, which turned out to be syrup, and changed into a clean robe. Well played, he nodded approvingly. She believed it. Richard, I looked at him with admiration. You didn't have to go that far. To deceive an old fox, one must play better than her. He smirked. This performance removed 90% of her suspicions. Now she'll focus on Arthur. He looked at me. And now it's time to deliver the second, decisive blow to make them return. After the perfect performance, Evelyn was completely convinced that the problem was in the United States. She unleashed all her anger on Arthur. Mother and son were temporarily stranded in Paris, forced to use emergency cash and live less comfortably. Suspicions against me were completely cleared. It was time to act. For the next 3 days, I barely slept. During the day, I was Anastasia the maid, cleaning, washing, and crying every time Evelyn called to complain. But at night, I was Richard Albright's student. In the secret room, he taught me everything. He spread out all the documents of Titan Industries before me. He explained every project, every financial loophole, every key figure on the board of directors. Here, he pointed to a name, Peter Harrison, a shareholder with 10%, an old friend of mine. Arthur forced him to sell some shares, but he held on. He absolutely hates Evelyn and her son. He will be our ally. And here's Susan Davies, the former chief accountant. Arthur fired her for refusing to sign fictitious documents. She has several important pieces of evidence. My Yale graduate memory awakened. I absorbed every bit of information. My theoretical knowledge, combined with Richard Albright's 10 years of practical experience, allowed me to grow every day. At first, he explained, but then it was enough for him to name a project, and I could already pinpoint where illegal money flows were leaking. "You're more capable than I thought," he said with satisfaction. "You're not just smart, you have a predator's instinct." On the 5th day of their trip, when I had 70% mastery of the company's situation, Richard Albright decided the time had come. "Tonight," he said, "release all the evidence," I asked. "No," he shook his head. "We can't blow up the entire market at once. We need to set fire to one stall first." Arthur's stall. He handed me a USB drive with evidence. "Here is all the evidence of how Arthur took bribes for approving shady contractors on the Park Avenue Residences project. The amount is $50 million. There's no need to leak this to the IRS or the police. If they are arrested immediately, Evelyn will become wary. We must create an internal storm. An anonymous email blast. Then?" Richard Albright smiled. "Send all these materials to the email addresses of the 20 largest shareholders and the entire audit committee, excluding Evelyn and Arthur." That night, using a system of foreign virtual servers prepared by David, I drafted a short, concise email. The truth about Executive Vice President Arthur Albright and the $50 million lost on the Park Avenue Residences project. Save Titan Industries before it's too late. I attached all the files. Audio recordings, contracts, bank statements. I looked at Richard Albright. He nodded. I pressed send, and the real storm began. The next morning, Titan Industries headquarters shook. At 10 a.m., Arthur's phone was ringing off the hook. Through the camera, we heard him shouting in his office. "What? Who set me up? Who sent this out?" By 11 a.m., the largest shareholders began demanding explanations from him. By 12 p.m., information began to leak out. Still only rumors, but Titan Industries shares on the stock exchange began to fall. Not a crash, but a steady move into the red zone, and Evelyn in Paris sensed danger. She called Arthur. "Explain to me what's happening, sister." "Someone set me up. Leaked all the evidence on Park Avenue Residences to the board of directors." Arthur's voice trembled with fear. "What?" Evelyn wailed. Her scream was so piercing that I had to move the phone away. $50 million. You dared to hide this from me. I thought the company would be ours anyway." "Ours? You idiot!" Evelyn was furious. "Shares are falling. Do you want us to go bankrupt? Who did this?" "I don't know. I ordered an investigation. Sister, maybe it's a mole." "A mole?" Evelyn froze. "Who do you think? Peter Harrison or that Susan Davies?" "I'm not sure, sister. Maybe you should come back?" "I'm afraid I can't handle it alone." "Useless piece of garbage," she hissed. "All you're good for is eating. All right, I'm coming back. I'll come back and tear that mole to pieces. Book me a ticket, the soonest flight. I must return immediately." She hung up. I looked at Richard Albright. He smiled. "The wolves are returning to the den, daughter-in-law," he said. "And now, it's time to prepare a cage for them." Just one day after sending the fateful email, I received a message from David. "The storm is approaching the shore. Flight SU-2459 from Paris to New York, landing today at 7 p.m. Richard Albright and I exchanged glances in the secret room. They're returning a week early, he said. His voice hardened. That proves your strike hit the very heart. Evelyn is losing control. What should I do, Richard? He looked at me seriously. Prepare. When an animal is cornered, it becomes the most insane and dangerous. She will unleash all her anger on you. You must endure. Whatever she does, endure. This is the final act. No mistakes. I understand. I clenched my fists. I will endure. Good, he nodded. Now I'm returning to my vegetative state. From this moment until my command, you do not enter here. All communication through taps on your hand. Remember, you are the pathetic maid, Anastasia. Go. I left the secret room, feeling like a soldier going to the battlefield. I spent the entire day cleaning the mansion. I polished every step until it gleamed, vacuumed every carpet. I wanted everything to be perfect, as a contrast to the impending storm. I didn't prepare dinner. I knew they wouldn't be in the mood to eat. I simply put on my gray maid's uniform, casually tied my hair, and sat on a stool in the kitchen, waiting. Exactly at 7:30 p.m., a taxi screeched to a halt at the gates. The angry thud of suitcases dropped onto the marble floor echoed. The front door burst open. Evelyn stormed in like a hurricane. She looked pitiful. Her expensive hairstyle was disheveled. Her designer clothes were wrinkled after the long flight. Her eyes were red not from fatigue, but from fury. Brandon trailed behind. His face was pale as a corpse. Mom, calm down, he said, dragging the suitcases. Calm down? How can I calm down? She screamed, her voice echoing through the house. The company is about to collapse. My life's work. She saw me, trembling in the kitchen doorway, her gaze immediately fixated on me. You, she hissed. You cursed girl. You bring nothing but misfortune. She lunged at me so fast I couldn't react. Slap. A stinging blow burned my left cheek. The impact was so strong that my head hit the corner of the kitchen cabinet. My ears rang, and I tasted blood in my mouth. What were you doing here? What have you done to cause such chaos in the company? I didn't do anything. I fell to the floor, covering my face with my hands and crying, exactly according to the script I had prepared. And you're arguing? She rushed to me, grabbed my hair, and yanked it back. Since the day you entered this house, not one peaceful day. You bring misfortune. You are useless. I left for only a few days, and you've already cursed the entire company. She beat me, hit me with her handbag on the back, kicked my legs with her sharp heels. Mom, stop. Brandon finally dared to intervene. The company's problems have nothing to do with her. Don't hit her. Shut up. Evelyn shoved him so hard he fell. Spineless. And you, all you know how to do is have fun. Look, all our fortune is about to vanish. Why did I even raise you? She was like a crazed animal. Seeing a flower pot in the corner, she grabbed it and hurled it to the floor near me. Soil and shards flew everywhere. I told you to watch over the house. You. She breathed heavily, pointing at me. Do you know how much the stock has fallen? Do you know how much money I've lost? You won't be able to pay for this with your entire life. I could only curl into a ball and sob desperately. Forgive me, Mom, forgive me. I'm so scared. Inside me, everything was icy. Every blow, every insult, I recorded in my heart. Hit me, I told myself. Hit me. This is the last time you'll lay a hand on me. For this slap, I will make you pay 100-fold. After beating and screaming, she seemed exhausted. Where's Arthur? She growled. Why didn't he meet me? Uncle Arthur said he's at the office, waiting for you, Brandon replied, trembling. Let's go. She adjusted her clothes, immediately to the office. I need to see who stabbed me in the back. She cast a final, hateful glance at me. And you, go to your father-in-law. If anything else happens to him, I'll kill both you and him. She and Brandon rushed out of the house again, got into the car, and drove away, leaving me alone in the midst of the chaos. I slowly got up. My cheek burned, my back ached, blood from my cut lip trickled down my chin. I trudged to the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror. A pitiful sight. Hair disheveled, face swollen, corner of my mouth split. I didn't wipe away my tears or the blood. I smiled a cold, frightening smile. Soon, Evelyn Albright, I whispered to my reflection. The fun is just beginning. For the next 2 days, the mansion was enveloped in a suffocating atmosphere. Evelyn, Brandon, and Arthur left early in the morning and returned late at night. Through the video surveillance system, Richard Albright and I, during the brief moments I entered his bathroom, knew that their affairs were going terribly wrong. Shareholders, having received the evidence, demanded an extraordinary meeting. Banks, sensing trouble, began demanding early repayment of loans. The IRS also began an investigation, demanding explanations from Arthur regarding the fictitious projects. Mother and son were cornered. On the second night, around 2 a.m., I pretended to be asleep when I overheard their argument in the living room. I tiptoed out and hid behind the staircase. It's all over, sister. Arthur's voice was full of despair. The banks have given us only 3 days. If we don't return $50 million in 3 days, they'll seize all company assets. 50 million! Where am I supposed to get 50 million now? Evelyn shrieked. All our cash is tied up in that Hamptons property. We can't pull it out that quickly now. I don't know what to do. Maybe we sell some shares? Are you out of your mind? She snapped. Selling now is selling for pennies on the dollar. They're just waiting for us to start selling off, so they can pounce and tear us apart. It's all over. Everything. Silence fell in the living room. I heard Evelyn's heavy breathing. Then she laughed a wild, eerie laugh. No, there's still one way. What? Arthur and Brandon asked in unison. The 51%, Evelyn said slowly, coldly. The 51% of that idiot Richard's shares. But he's a vegetable, Arthur said. He's a vegetable, but he has guardians. Evelyn looked upstairs, towards my room. That's Anastasia. She's his daughter-in-law, his caregiver. She's stupid. Mom, you want to? Brandon said quietly. Tomorrow, she growled. I'll make her sign a deed of gift for all of Richard's shares to you, Brandon. As his guardian, her signature will have full legal force. And will she sign? Arthur worried. What if she doesn't? We'll make her. Evelyn slammed the table. Who is she in this house? A servant. Nothing more. I'll give her 2 choices. Either she signs, or I, with the help of an attorney, throw her out on the street, divorce her from my son without a dime. What do you think she'll choose? I clamped my mouth shut to avoid making a sound. Here it was, the trap Richard Albright had spoken of. She was walking right into it. The next morning, I pretended to know nothing. I got up early, prepared breakfast, but no one ate. Evelyn called me to the living room. Her face was haggard, but her eyes glowed with an unhealthy gleam. Arthur and Brandon were already sitting there, as well as an unfamiliar man, an attorney with an impassive face and thick glasses. A thick stack of papers lay on the table. Anastasia. Evelyn's voice was surprisingly calm. Sit down. I meekly perched on the edge of the sofa. You know, the company is going through difficult times right now. She began her performance. I lowered my head. Yes, your father-in-law, as you can see, is no longer able to bear this burden. Brandon, as his son, must take his place. She pushed the papers towards me. This is a deed of gift for all 51% of your father-in-law's shares to your husband. You, as his caregiver and guardian, must sign here, and all problems will be resolved. I stared at the papers. My hands began to tremble. Here it was, the greatest performance of my life. I don't understand. I began to cry. Tears of fear, which I had rehearsed for so long. This is Richard Albright's property. Why? Why all to Brandon? I don't dare. Shut up. Evelyn lost her patience. She slammed the table. What do you understand, anyway? Your husband, his son, it's his to inherit. Sign it. No, no. What if Richard wakes up? He'll scold me. I shook my head and backed away. Wakes up? Evelyn burst into a wild, insane laugh. You think that rotting carcass can still wake up? Are you dreaming? Sign it. She grabbed a pen and shoved it into my hand. I was in a panic. I looked at Brandon, my only husband. I looked at him imploringly. Brandon, say something. I'm scared. Brandon dared not look me in the eyes. He lowered his head and mumbled, Sign it, Anastasia. Mom is doing this for our family. The last knife thrust pierced my heart. It wasn't pain, but extreme disgust. He wasn't just a weakling, he was an accomplice. No. I threw the pen on the floor. I stood up. I won't sign. This is Richard Albright's property. You are robbing him. I can't do this to him. It's a crime. You. Evelyn was stunned. She hadn't expected the submissive maid to dare to object. You dare to call me a robber? Yes. Fine. Evelyn suddenly smiled. This smile was more terrifying than any scream. You don't want to sign? You don't have to. She turned to the attorney. Prepare the divorce papers. I froze. Who do you think you are? Evelyn stood up and approached me closely, enunciating each word. Do you think you're the mistress of this house? You've just latched onto Brandon, onto this family. You won't sign? She grabbed my hair very tightly. I will divorce you from him immediately. I will throw you out on the street in what you're wearing right now. You won't get a dime. You'll go back to your Ohio. She leaned close to my ear and hissed, Your mother. I heard she has a bad heart. She urgently needs surgery. Without my money, she'll definitely die. The lowest blow. She struck my only weak spot. My body trembled not from fear, but from rage. Such insane rage that I wanted to kill this woman, but I suppressed it. I turned it into despair. No, Mom, I beg you, I cried, a heart-wrenching, broken sob. I collapsed to the floor, grabbing her legs. Mommy, please don't do this. My mother, whatever you want, I'll do it. Just don't abandon my mother. Then sign. She coldly kicked me away with her foot. I looked at the papers on the table. I looked at Brandon, who was still sitting, head bowed. I looked at Arthur, who was smirking. I'll sign. I sobbed. My voice broke. I'll sign. Just don't kick me out. Save my mother. I crawled to the table, picked up the pen. The attorney flipped through the pages. Sign here. Write your full name. Anastasia Miller Albright, wife of Brandon Albright, legal guardian and authorized representative of Richard Albright. My hands shook. Tears dripped onto the paper, blurring the ink. But these were tears of liberation. They didn't know. They had just handed me the weapon to destroy them. I made the last signature. Done. Evelyn snatched the papers from me, as if afraid I would change my mind. She pressed them to her chest and laughed. There. See? You're just a little dog, willing to do anything for money. Very obedient. She turned to Arthur. Her eyes burned. Immediately call an extraordinary shareholders meeting. Tomorrow, at 9 a.m. I want the whole world to know that my son, my Brandon, will be the new chairman of the board of Titan Industries. They celebrated. They exulted. They no longer looked at me, weeping on the floor. That night, with a bruise on my cheek and scrapes on my hands, I entered Richard Albright's room. You've endured much, my girl, he whispered. He knew everything. They have the documents, I said, in a surprisingly calm voice. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., the shareholders' meeting. Excellent, he nodded. David has prepared everything. The old shareholders, journalists, and even the police. Everyone is ready. He looked at me, at his daughter-in-law with the face of a domestic violence victim. Are you ready, Anastasia? For the finale, I looked into the darkness. I'm ready, Richard. Tomorrow, I will get everything back. For you and for myself. 9 a.m. Titan Industries headquarters. The largest conference room, meant only for the board of directors and senior management, was packed to capacity today. Dozens of journalists thronged the lobby, but tension permeated every corner. I stood in a small preparation room, peering through a crack. This was my first time in my father-in-law's company. It was even more majestic than I had imagined. But I was not in the mood for admiration. My heart pounded like a drum. Beside me, David, the loyal assistant, adjusted the suit on Richard Albright. He was no longer a corpse on a bed. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit. His hair was neatly styled. Although he was in a wheelchair as part of the plan, His regal aura was already beginning to show. Scared? Richard Albright asked quietly, his eyes fixed on me. No, I replied, though my voice trembled slightly. I'm just anticipating. Good, he nodded. Turn that anticipation into strength. Today, you are the main character. David rolled the chair to the door. Time, Chairman, Anastasia Miller. I took a deep breath. I hadn't slept last night. I used the best foundation David had prepared, but it couldn't completely hide the purple bruise on my cheek and my split lip, and I decided to let it be. I wanted everyone to see. The door to the conference room opened. Evelyn, Arthur, and Brandon entered like conquerors. Evelyn in a flowing silk dress and diamond jewelry. Her face expressed arrogance. Arthur beside her, sleek, grinning from ear to ear. Brandon, her beloved son, in an expensive suit, looked elegant, but his gaze darted around. He dared not look at anyone. The perfect puppet. David wheeled in Richard Albright. The appearance of the vegetable caused a slight whisper, but it was quickly suppressed. Oh! Evelyn cast a glance at him. Her voice was full of false sympathy. Our chairman has decided to visit us too. What an honor. All right, put him in that corner. Let him hear the good news. David silently wheeled the chair to a corner behind the rows of shareholders. Everyone began to take their seats. I recognized Peter Harrison, the old friend Richard Albright had mentioned. He looked at Arthur with hatred. Evelyn ascended the podium, took the microphone. Greetings, esteemed shareholders. She cleared her throat. I know, the last few days there has been some turbulence in our company, but rest assured, these are all the machinations of petty rivals, and today we are here to solve all problems. She smiled triumphantly. Titan Industries cannot remain without a leader. My husband, Richard Albright, as you can see, due to his health, cannot fulfill his duties. Therefore, as his wife and legal guardian, she held up the folder with the documents I had signed. I declare that all 51% of his shares are legally transferred to his only heir, my son, Brandon Albright. Silence fell. Shareholders exchanged glances. Some began to whisper. And from this moment on, Evelyn spoke louder, cutting through the whispers. I declare that the new chairman of the board of Titan Industries is Brandon Albright. Arthur applauded loudly. Brandon stood up and bowed awkwardly. Evelyn surveyed the hall, savoring the moment of power. Does anyone have any objections? She asked purely for formality, confident that no one would dare. I do. A voice, not loud, but clear and cold, made everyone turn to the door, and into the hall I walked. I walked in high heels David had prepared, in a white pantsuit, perfectly tailored. My hair was pulled back in a high, strict bun. I walked slowly. The click of my heels on the marble echoed in the silence. Click, click, sharp and clear. All eyes were on me. Shock, surprise. And as I came closer, horror. The purple bruise on my cheek was clearly visible under the bright hall lights. You! Evelyn was the first to recover. She screamed, You! Who let you in here? This is a shareholders' meeting. Who are you? Security, security, get her out. Brandon froze. There was no color in his face. He had never seen me like this. I didn't even look at her. I walked directly to the podium, stood opposite her, and took another microphone. Hello, everyone. My calm voice resonated through the hall. My name is Anastasia Miller. I am here in two capacities. My first capacity, I looked at the shareholders. I am a shareholder of Titan Industries. A shareholder? You? Peter Harrison exclaimed. Yes, I said. Chairman of the board, Richard Albright secretly transferred 1% of his shares to me 3 years ago. I have every legal right to be here. Evelyn was stunned. What? 1%? That old. My second capacity. I turned to her. My gaze was icy. I am here to inform you, esteemed Evelyn Albright, that the paper you hold in your hands is nothing more than worthless paper. What are you talking about? She trembled with rage. Strike number 1. I whispered into the microphone. Please look at the screen, everyone. I pressed a button on a remote control. On the large screen behind Evelyn, a document appeared with a red court seal. It was my divorce petition. I declare that today, at 8 a.m., I filed for unilateral divorce from Brandon Albright. The court has accepted the petition for consideration. According to the law, from the moment a petition is accepted for consideration, any documents concerning jointly acquired property, especially those signed under duress, lose their legal validity. Under duress? Evelyn's attorney jumped up. You claim you were forced? I turned my face to him. I pointed to the bruise on my cheek, to my swollen lip. Here, I said, is the proof of voluntary consent that Evelyn Albright granted me last night so that I would sign this paper. And I have an audio recording where she threatens to kill my mother if I don't sign. The hall erupted. Whispers turned into a roar. Journalists outside, hearing the commotion, began to push their way in. No, no! Evelyn reeled back. You set me up. I didn't give her a break. Strike number 2. I pressed the remote again. The divorce petition disappeared. In its place appeared a DNA test result. Even if I hadn't filed for divorce, I said, Brandon Albright still has no right to inherit my father-in-law's property. I looked directly at Brandon, who was trembling so much he was about to collapse, because I emphasized every word. He is not the biological son of Richard Albright. Boom. It was an explosion in the minds of everyone present. Brandon staggered and collapsed into a chair. Arthur's mouth hung open in amazement, and Evelyn, she went insane. Lies. You're lying. How dare you defame me? She screamed, lunging at me like a wounded animal. This is all a forgery. That vegetable. How could he take a test? He's just a rotting corpse. He's obsolete material, she shrieked, pointing at the wheelchair in the corner where Richard Albright sat. The entire hall, as if on command, held its breath and turned in that direction. And then they heard a voice, hoarse, but authoritative. Whom did you just call a rotting corpse, Evelyn Albright? Absolute silence fell in the hall. It was so heavy that it seemed you could hear a fly buzz. All eyes were fixed on the wheelchair. Evelyn froze in place. Her scream caught in her throat, and Richard Albright slowly moved. He raised his hand and removed the prosthetic oxygen tube from his nose. He tore the heart rate monitors from his chest. Then, leaning on the armrests, he slowly, very slowly, stood up. He straightened to his full height. Majestic, like a king risen from the dead. Ah, ah! Evelyn let out a terrifying, inhuman shriek. She staggered backward, tripped, and collapsed to the floor. A ghost. You're dead. Brandon, who had just come to, saw this and, rolling his eyes, genuinely fainted. Arthur, the cunning executive vice president, reacted fastest of all. He understood that it was all over. He turned and rushed to the door. Stop, Arthur! Richard Albright's voice boomed like thunder. 2 plainclothes detectives, who had been sitting among the guests until then, immediately apprehended him. What are you doing? Let me go! Arthur screamed and struggled. Mr. Albright, one of the officers said coldly, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of large-scale embezzlement, receiving bribes, and forging documents. Richard Albright didn't even glance at him. He unhurriedly ascended the podium. He stood beside me. He looked at the woman with whom he had shared a home and a bed, at the woman who was now writhing on the floor. Are you surprised, Evelyn? His voice was calm, but every word struck like a hammer. Surprised that I didn't die? Or surprised that I know about you and your former lover, from whom you bore this bastard? No, Richard. Forgive me. She crawled towards him, trying to hug his legs. Don't touch me, he cut in. 10 years I lay in bed, pretending to be a corpse, watching you and your brother play your game, watching you steal my sweat and blood. The sweat and blood of thousands of workers. He turned to the large screen. I ask everyone to look. This time, he pressed the remote. The very USB drive's contents appeared on the screen, dozens of pieces of evidence. A video of Arthur receiving a suitcase full of money from a contractor. An audio recording where Evelyn and Arthur discussed how to stage the accident 10 years ago. He must die for sure, or at worst, remain paralyzed forever. Bank statements from Switzerland, Singapore. Billions of dollars transferred abroad. The hall fell silent. Shock gave way to anger. Murderer, someone shouted. Scum, arrest them all. Richard Albright raised his hand. The hall quieted. Arthur, he said, the law will deal with your crimes. And you? He looked at Evelyn. You thought you won. Evelyn, who had nothing left to lose, burst into a wild, insane laugh. Won? You think you defeated me? She pointed at me. With the help of this girl? With what? Evidence. Haha. So what? What if you woke up? You're still useless. The shares, the 51% of shares, Anastasia signed them. She transferred them to Brandon. Ha 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 ha. This corporation still belongs to my son. She somewhat managed to stand, snatched the papers from the petrified attorney's hands. Here's her signature. See? She signed voluntarily. What will you do to me? Richard Albright looked at her with pity. Evelyn, he said slowly, you're smart, but you have one weakness. What weakness? You're too greedy, he said, and you despise others too much. He turned to me. Daughter-in-law, where is your last gift for your mother-in-law? I nodded. I stepped forward. Evelyn Albright, you said I signed voluntarily. Yes, you begged me on your knees. Then listen to this, I said and turned on the voice recorder in my jacket pocket, and the sounds of yesterday echoed through the hall. My heartbreaking sobs. No, Mom, I beg you. And Evelyn's cold, merciless voice. Then sign. I will divorce you from him immediately. I will throw you out on the street. Your mother, I heard she has a bad heart. Without my money, she'll definitely die. And my desperate cry, I'll sign. Just don't kick me out. Save my mother. As soon as the recording ended, Evelyn's attorney, pale, stepped back. Mrs. Albright. The same police officer approached her. You are officially under arrest on charges of threats, coercion to commit a transaction for the purpose of property theft, and complicity in the attempted murder of Richard Albright 10 years ago. They put handcuffs on her. Let me go. I'm the owner. I'm the chairman. She struggled wildly. Richard, you ruined me. Anastasia, you're a devil. I'll kill you. I'll kill your entire family. She was led away. Her curses echoed down the corridor for a long time. Silence finally fell in the hall. Only a quiet sob remained. Brandon had come to. He saw everything. His mother arrested. His uncle arrested. The father he had called father his whole life stood cold as ice. He had lost everything. Family, fortune, future, wife. He crawled to me, grabbed the edge of my jacket. Anastasia, dearest Anastasia, forgive me. Please, forgive me, he sobbed. I didn't know anything. Mom forced me. I love you, Anastasia. Forgive me. I looked down at the man who was once my husband. Once, I had loved him, hoped he would be my protector. I coldly pulled my clothing free from his hands. You don't love me. You only love yourself. My voice was devoid of all emotion. You saw me being beaten, and you were silent. You knew your mother was doing evil, and you indulged her. You are not just a weakling. You are an accomplice to evil. I took a copy of the divorce petition from my pocket and threw it in his face. Coward, I said. From today, nothing connects us anymore. I turned and walked towards Richard Albright. The storm had passed. Richard Albright, using his authority and iron will, quickly calmed the board of directors. He presented all original evidence and promised to rectify all the consequences caused by Evelyn and her family's actions. Peter Harrison and other longtime shareholders immediately supported him. He declared loudly, Richard Albright, officially returned to the post of chairman of the board of Titan Industries. The hall erupted in applause. He looked at me and smiled. And I want to introduce the person who saved me and saved this entire company, my daughter-in-law, Anastasia Miller. All eyes turned to me again. This time, there was neither pity nor curiosity in them. There was respect. Peter Harrison was the first to stand and applaud. I stepped forward and bowed. I knew that a new battle, the battle for the revival of Titan Industries, was just beginning, but I was no longer afraid. 6 months later, the Titan Industries building still stood majestically in its place, but a new life permeated it. I emerged from a negotiating room, having just concluded difficult negotiations with our Japanese partners. Successfully, Titan Industries, under my and Richard Albright's leadership, had overcome the crisis. We paid off all debts, restructured the entire system, and profits for the last quarter were even higher than in its best times. Newspapers reported that Evelyn and Arthur received life sentences for attempted murder and embezzlement. Their accomplice attorney was disbarred and also went to prison. And Brandon, since he did not directly participate in the conspiracy, and due to his unstable mental state, was released after several interrogations. He disappeared from New York. I entered the elevator and descended to the underground parking lot. Richard Albright had offered me a new car, but I declined. I bought myself a small car with my first paycheck. Evening in New York was beautiful. I drove slowly through the streets, window down, letting the wind play in my hair. I had cut my hair short. I felt free, truly free. My car stopped at a traffic light. On the other side of the street, a crew of sanitation workers was clearing trash. I happened to glance in their direction, and my heart skipped a beat. A thin man, his skin darkened from work, in an orange vest, diligently swept dry leaves. He lifted his head to wipe his sweat. It was Brandon. Our eyes met through the car window. He froze, and then, like a caught thief, hastily lowered his head, gripped his broom tighter, and hunched, trying to hide. I looked at him. There was no longer hatred, nor love, only a fleeting pity, as if for a stranger. The light turned green. I didn't look back. I pressed the accelerator, and the car sped forward.